Can they do it? That's the question that everybody at home and everybody here is honestly asking. You know, it's fun. It's fun to really go and, sit with the players and kind of listen to what they're talking about. And usually at these LANs, it's a little bit more relaxed. Players aren't always talking about the games, right? Right now, everybody is talking about Oxygen Supremacy. They're out of control.
Yeah, we're actually scrim partners with them, or sort of scrim partners with them, and they've been consistently super strong practice. They have a lot of diverse picks, and I think they're showing it off really well.
Now, are you the scrim partners with them because you are the final boss of this gauntlet, and for them to get to you, it would take, like, basically knocking out everybody, potentially?
We're actually really close friends with them, outside of the game and inside, so it kind of, like, naturally we ended up falling into scrim partners with them. And our playstyles tend to mesh really well, so our practice ends up, we end up elevating each other through our scrims.
Elevates a European team, sorry, but I got a little excited. I got a little ahead of myself. These games are a little bit too interesting for me, but I have a new friend. It's no longer the German Dimmy, it's the New Yorker Chaos. Welcome to the desk. You are the mid laner for E United, are you not?
Yes, I am.
And what else do you do, Chaos?
I'm Jean Quay, man.
There you go. Are we going to see Jean Quay this weekend?
I don't know.
I don't know either. We'll see what Oxygen Supremacy can do. As I said, coming back to it, everybody's just buzzing about these guys, and what's fun is that it's not just one guy. It's not just one player. You're hearing, oh man, look at NeiruMah and what he's able to do. It's just raw talent coming out of the support roller. Look at DayToRemeber and how he's able to just flex it. What has been the most exciting part for you?
I think it's how well the team has meshed together as they came into it. They were all novices, or they've been in the scene for a while, but they haven't like fully pushed themselves up. And the way that they're meshing their play styles together and working together, and it's proving out so well, is incredible. It's incredible to see it.
It is a lot of fun. We'll take a look at how we're standing so far with 2 matches in the dust. As we said, the Challenger team, well, they're doing pretty damn well.
Absolutely. We see, and like you mentioned before, Tom, just everybody playing their own part here from Oxygen. Kiki doing work with that Morrigan. We saw Skeeledon doing work with the Hunbats and the Susno. And then in the last set, the last game, Venenu and DayToRemeber with these double hunters. There just wasn't a point in time when we weren't calling those 2 names out.
Yeah, In Memory of Gabe is going to be up next. We'll see who winds up facing them. But ALG, this one's going to be a little bit tougher, I think, than the other 2 for Oxygen Supremacy. With that in mind, my official analysis, I think it's still totally doable for Oxygen. ALG, unfortunately, has had a little bit of a misstep, losing their prize support player, Polar Bear Mike, and now having a new guy, Vivian, he's playing under. He's gone under the name Puda Spear and Guy in Your Bed as well, so you might know him from around the scene. But this is going to be one of his first professional experiences. Are you familiar with the player, Chaos, and what can you tell us?
I think Guy in Your Bed's actually a very strong support. He's been in the Challenger Cup scene for a while, and he's actually performed pretty well. I think he fits the team atmosphere because he was good friends with all of them. I don't know if he's had enough time to grow with the team yet, but I do believe it was a good addition.
So we'll see how that one works out. Especially, my key is that whether or not he's better or worse than Polar Bear Mike when it comes to supports, that's such an interesting term. But PBM brings so much more outside of his gameplay to the squad, whether it be communication, shot calling, etc. So it's going to be very interesting watching this team as a unit come together. But that's really what it's all about. Vivian, as I said, is the new player. He's the Guardian. Oceans, the young star sophomore now, no longer in his rookie season. For me, Metyankey has been nice, but it's Oceans and CycloneSpin that are the guys that carry this team off of some of the shots from Weekend. I think those are the 3 players that we're really going to be looking at.
Absolutely. These 2 side laners being led by Weekend in the jungle role, trying to find some of these plays happening, but now having another different frontliner paired up with Weekend. VV next 3. The question is, how comfortable is he really going to be in his first real LAN, his first real test here?
That is a question, and I'll ask the player. Chaos, how big of a deal is it that Vivian here for the first time?
I think it's going to be his where he's going to have to prove his most potential, because obviously showing up at LAN, he actually didn't get to play in the SPL, and he's going right into LAN, so it's definitely like a very difficult thing to first step into. But I think he's very comfortable in his role, and I think he's very comfortable with the team, and I think he's going to shine super well. I know he's just super happy to be here regardless. So
for me, it's all about Weekend, honestly. Weekend gets some flack here and there, but at the core of it, Weekend is one of the better leaders, in my opinion, in the Smite Pro League. His ability to lift his team up and have them depend on him is a very big deal and a very big part of what Allegiance has been doing. New players, old players abound. They have to listen to Weekend, and Weekend's going to speak up.
My name's Kurt, Weekend Stray. I'm jungler for Team Allegiance. Outside of Smite, I am everyone should know I stream. I do YouTube. That's like half my day. I got engaged recently, so working on the wedding thing. And then outside of that, I do a lot of work. I have a Jeep, brand new Jeep Wrangler. I have a brand new Corvette. I've actually been doing a lot to them, adding like cosmetic things and stuff for fun. Getting to do that with my dad, which is awesome. And then I collect shoes, which is a lot different and something I get to talk about on YouTube and stream a lot. And there's a lot of people who actually know about as much as I do, and it's really surprising, and it's a really cool kind of community to build up around. I've played competitive Smite since the SPL was created. I basically came into the competitive scene a month or two before the SPL was created and been here ever since. So I was on basically one team. We went through a bunch of different team names, starting with Snipe, went through Complexity, AFK Gaming, Envy, been through it all, but it was mainly with the same group of people. Played for like a year and a half with those guys, and then had a quick break where I was out for like half of the split. Came back with Team Allegiance, and I've been with them ever since. For issues that could come up, it's really hard to see them. I've played with Oceans and Cyclone now for a long time. I don't see any issues coming out of them. Me and Matt are still working on things because, I mean, we're going through it. Basically right now there's a 3v3 meta, so swapping out our support kind of still affects me and Matt in a way that you can't see it if you're not an actual player. So me and him will have to work through some things. We'll have to get Guy in Your Bed up to pace with how we want to play the game and the way we want our team fights called and all that stuff. But those are issues that you just work through. They aren't really big team problems. I'd say for this LAN, our main goal is just see where we stand. We brought in a new player we have 3 nights of scrims. We've played maybe 12 games with Guy in Your Bed. He's playing under Vivian. I just want to see where he stands because he's a good player. I can see it. So if he comes out and kills it at LAN, I have high hopes for us the rest of the split. Honestly, if we buckle down, which was the original idea, I think we could end up, if you look at it, the start of the split, the start of the season doesn't really mean much. There's so many teams who start terribly and end with a perfect last split, go into Worlds and win it, or you have a chance at winning it. So I really do expect us to be in that situation where come Worlds time, we're ready to play and we're one of the top teams.
Just speaks like a leader, honestly. Just everything he has to say about him and his teammates really lets you know what kind of guy he's going to be for the squad.
Definitely a really hot player in the way he plays the game, but he's coming into this game really cold here. 4 games was the warm-up here already for Oxygen Supremacy, and without any real games here being played from Team Allegiance, I'm not even sure if they scrimmed earlier on today or the previous couple of days here, but they're going to be up against a tall task here.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you say that because it varies on player. We were talking to Dimmy, and Dimmy said, you know, look, I do like to play beforehand, whereas Aggro, pro player in his own right, said, look, man, I didn't even want to play the day beforehand. I like to come in cold. Chaos, what's your ideal situation when in a situation like this?
Do
you want the warm-up games, or do you want to be a little bit colder?
I think the thing about the warm-up games is maybe like the first set works in your favor, but after a while you start to get a bit of like fatigue as you're starting to play, and the more and more often you end up having to run through the same compositions and the same things, you're more prone to end up making mistakes. But I do believe that they have the momentum right now because they've basically gone 4-0. So I think that's going to work in their favor more so than the fatigue.
What I'm looking for is sort of there's a mathematical term that you probably know that I don't. But there's a point at which point the momentum winds up losing favor because of the lack of extra strategies that you've had. Skeeledon right here on your screen has been fantastic in bringing different things out. We've seen the Hunbats, we've seen the utility Hunbats, we've seen the aggressive Susano, we've even seen some other picks as well. But when that well runs dry, can you run off of the gas fumes of momentum alone?
Well, I think the thing is, Skilly's always been a super smart player, and he has a lot of mechanics now to back that up. And I think their compositions are very cohesive. So regardless of, you know, running out of gas maybe, I think they're going to be super consistent regardless of that.
You can never really sleep on the Schleep. He's been bringing so many tools here at Oxygen's arsenal that they're able to run these kinds of compositions beautifully every single time. Every game has just been almost flawless to the point where none of their Phoenixes were even truly contested.
You know, I think that's what's so exciting for me here is that, like I said, last time around, we've seen Most Wanted, the Challenger team, come and beat a couple of teams, and then they kind of get beat out. And what you see is these teams run off of pure talent, and then they sort of falter to teams that have a little bit more experience or whatnot than them. Whereas Auctions and Supremacy, they've come in with a lot of talent, but they also have the playbook to come with it. You're seeing the strategy in picks and bans and on the battlefield, which is something that's indicative of a Smite Pro League team, not always the Challenger Circuit squads.
Well, keep in mind that they're also playing with 3 former SPL players between Skeeledon, Kiki, and Venenu, so they have this kind of experience to also flex some of their strategy, see what works, see what doesn't. And on top of this, they also see what some of the SPL players are doing while they're in the Challenger Circuit, so they have a chance to not only do their own strategies, but practice those strategies that they don't necessarily have footage of in the Challenger Circuit.
And like I said, DayToRemeber, certainly a king of his own little realm coming in here now, but NeiruMah, this is a guy that has been around the Smite scene, even if you don't know his name forever. If you go troll around on esports wikis or whatever your site of choice is, you're gonna find that, oh, he was on a team with that guy? Oh, wait, in 2014, 2013, 2012? So these guys are no strangers to the scene, no strangers to Skadi, as the Hunter will be the first selection likely for DayToRemeber, though we'll keep an eye on it. Osiris and Fafnir will be the choices for ALG.
We saw Osiris being played on Aquarius in the first set for Flashpoint, but this time it's going to be the Osiris for CycloneSpin, a guy that definitely knows how to roll with the punches, and once he gets a little bit of a lead, he does not let it slip through his fingers.
So the Nike is going to be paired up with a Terra here for Oxygen Supremacy as they quickly lock in their choices. Now, we had Demi on here earlier, Chaos, who spoke about Nike kind of negatively, saying she jumps in, she gets canceled, and then kind of just walks around. How do you feel about the character?
I feel like she's kind of like a bait character, so she kind of throws herself at you, and you end up wasting like a lot of abilities on her. She's going to pop her ult, and then you're not going to be able to kill her. And then the rest of the team fight's going to fall negatively in your favor because you've burned all those ults on Nike.
Which is also what Terra's kind of looking to do.
Right, well, Terra is going to look to like keep the team alive, especially with her ult and the sustain. So if Nike ends up baiting all those ultimates out, Skadi's going to be able to shred through everybody as long as you know, Nike baits those ultimates and then Terra keeps them alive afterwards.
So Auction and Supremacy kind of just hoping that Team Allegiance are going to throw everything at these characters. The third choice and the final selection of the first half for ALG, a little bit different than Osiris and Fafnir, who came rather quickly, and Serqet will be the choice for the jungler on Team Allegiance. Now, Weekend has come a long way, but when he first started making his content, the Serqet tail was the logo for the Backstabbers. So we'll see how Serqet's going to work out here. A Wheelish first ban in Phase 2 for ALG.
I like the idea. You have your own jungler, now take some options away here from Skeeledon. Wheelish wasn't necessarily his go-to pick this whole day so far, so that means that there's going to be some jumps here probably from Team Allegiance, especially making sure that Weekend on the Serqet doesn't get taken away during the 3.
Rom will be taken away. That's one of Ocean's go-to characters. Although with Medusa still on the table, that is certainly an option for him as well. I'm eager to see if OS bans out Dusa here.
They probably should, considering the fact that Team Allegiance has the next pick. Medusa here would be very problematic, especially considering that Team Allegiance could potentially play the Medusa in mid as well, considering Metyankey used to be that former Hunter player, and that would be an interesting strategy to have these 2 double physical characters that early on in mid.
The Poseidon, instead, will go ahead and be the ban. This character has pretty much dominated all leagues, Smite Pro League, even some of our international leagues. Very rarely do characters across the world of Smite really match up in the meta, but Poseidon just too strong. I was going to ask you about Poseidon, but instead I'm going to ask you about Agni, Chaos. Why do we see the control mage come out for Allegiance?
I think Agni is very strong in the level 1 mid pressure, so they're probably going to look. Yes. Dash is super strong at the moment, especially if you can look to box. So they're probably going to look for that early pressure off the first wave. And then it's a lot of good control, especially against Terra, who can like root you. If you were an immobile mage, it's very easy. For example, as Poseidon, it's very easy to get caught in that root. So Agni has that mobility to get out safely and still deal a lot of damage from the backline.
Still got some choices in the deck. We were talking about running out of cards and not having strategies. The Kuang throwback pick here for Skeeledon. Now, Skeeledon, we mentioned, momentum-based player. He's had success. Throw him on a character like this as the best of 3. See if he can win it.
without Kuang being out of the meta for so long, I'm not even sure if Team Allegiance expected this kind of selection here, banning away both the Awilish and Susanoo here. There's going to be a lot of late game damage out of OS, especially with this Kuang, and even the Cupid pick trying to make sure that the boxing potential is going to favor DayToRemeber.
Love the Cupid pick. Going to shut down Agni and Serqet with the cripple. Love the Kuang. Keep your enemy on their toes, toss them to the skies, and throw them in the ground. Me? I'm on the side of OS. I like the draft. I like the way that these players have been playing, and I think that they can take game one from ALG. Chaos, how you feeling?
I feel like Team Allegiance's comp is definitely much, much stronger early game, and they're going to look to pressure on the buffs early game, and as long as they don't make too many mistakes, I actually think the game should go in Team Allegiance's favor. However, if they screw up on those early invades, I believe OS's comp is definitely super, super strong at like just completely capitalizing on those mistakes.
Same exact thing. Early Allegiance, late OS.
We'll see how it happens. Is it early? Is it late? One thing I do know, it's Taco and it's aggro. Bring us the game.
So for the first 3 picks for Allegiance, I was sitting here saying this is the dream scenario for them. They get CycloneSpin Osiris, they get weakened Serqet. Oh, OS is in trouble. And then they throw us Kuang and Cupid, and I'm not so sure, Taco.
I actually like the Cupid pick. Kuang is a little bit more situational. I really just want to see how Skeely manages to perform with that, especially considering early invades are most definitely going to be a threat.
I love this Cupid selection. It's Oxygen Supremacy saying you guys can pick lots of dashes, you can pick lots of mobility. We've got Skadi, you don't have to worry about Cupid. And then they lock in the Cupid after Allegiance takes both Serqet and Agni, 2 gods that get absolutely decimated by Fields of Love. Oxygen Supremacy certainly not running out of options as far as their draft goes, in that Skadi is going to the mid lane here for Venenu. Is this where you'd prefer to see Skadi, or would you rather see the mid laner playing Cupid?
Both of these hunters could definitely be interchangeable. It doesn't matter whether the Cupid is in the mid lane or if the Skadi's in the mid lane, because what Oxygen Supremacy are really looking for is just lockdown potential around objective team fights.
And they've got plenty of it. Lots of AoE damage and just control between NeiruMah, DayToRemeber, and of course Kiki, who's got a very, very potent slow on that ultimate. Love this positioning early on here from Allegiance, though. Weaken and CycloneSpin both high up in that enemy jungle, making sure that Skeeledon and Kiki cannot get those buffs for free early on. But Weaken and Cyclone both backing up to go to wave, and it looks like Skeely and Kiki will just take their speed instead.
Oxygen Supremacy really just wanted to immediately go for the speed buff just to ensure that Skeely would get that, because it would be so detrimental were he to miss his initial jungle buff. And now actually the invade is going to be coming through from Oxygen.
Wow, ALG might end up on the losing side here, but if the mid lane recognize what's happening, and they do, this could spell trouble for Oxygen Supremacy. Weaken and Cyclone are on the way, but Venenu and NeiruMah pick the right path. They choose their own adventure, and they go down the right side mid-harpies, and that's the area that gets them out of danger. It looks like they stole away the 2 minis on that speed buff to give them a little bit of an XP boost, so nice play coming out of the mid lane.
No complaints either on the side of Venenu and NeiruMah, considering that could have been a little bit more dangerous had everybody else started to catch on.
It was just a little bit too late, considering Weaken and CycloneSpin's pathing to try and invade blue, and then deciding maybe we'll do Ellies. They do elementals, but it ends up not going in their favor to catch NeiruMah and Venenu, 2 pretty immobile characters at this stage, though NeiruMah probably has that dash ready to go. There isn't a lot of mobility on the side of Oxygen Supremacy, which is the exact opposite of Allegiance's draft. Skadi, Cupid's got that dash, but Skeeledon, that's a pretty short-range stealth. You gotta have to just play cheeky with that if you want to really escape danger. Oxygen, if they're on the back foot, could have trouble getting away from Allegiance's composition.
I also really like how Oxygen are opting to leave DayToRemeber alone in that dual lane. Medusa can be incredibly annoying, and while she has relatively safe lane clear, at the same time, Cupid is just as annoying, if not worse, considering his Heart Bomb has a stun as well.
And as soon as DayToRemeber hits level 5, I expect to see that Fields of Love coming out, basically on cooldown to force either the Purification Beads or the Petrify away from Oceans. I think everyone at home and most people here sitting here watching in the arena are all turning their eyes towards this Fafnir. Vivian might know him more as Guy in Your Bed on Twitter. and I believe Twitch, though I'm not really sure. He's definitely a new face in terms of the competitive scene, but a guy who's been around, you know, hanging around with these players for quite some time.
He's definitely been around the rank scene mostly for a couple of years now. Usually known for, at one point in time, he was called Guan in your bed because he would only pick Guan Yu all the time. But I think it's really interesting to see how much he's developed over the years, and I think that this is a great chance for him to display his progress.
And you heard Weekend in his interview say that he sees a lot of potential in this player, and Weekend is a guy that can definitely try and mold a new player to his liking. Could certainly work out, though I think Allegiance is going to struggle, at least early on, without the presence of Polar Bear Mike, who, as F. mentioned on the desk, what he may not have brought on the field at times, definitely in terms of CC and just helping out the team. NeiruMah, he needs some help from the rest of his team, and Kiki provides it with that Sentinel of Zeus, slowing everyone from Allegiance away from the support. Now CycloneSpin caught in a weird spot, in trouble, trying to chase him down, but the execute goes on to Vivian instead, but Vivian may fall for first blood, and he will. Skeeledon, another first blood to his name. I don't know exactly how many that is in 4 games, Taco, but that's at least his second, just putting his stamp on the game early every single time.
NeiruMah, really, I think that it was absolutely phenomenal peeling on the side of Oxygen Supremacy, not only getting him out in what looked like a situation where he was definitely dead, but then the turnaround, even with Skeeledon not being able to secure the execute like he would have ideally wanted, I'm picking up that kill for an out Kuang so early. That's absolutely, that's going to be really tough for Allegiance.
Now, it did cost Skeeledon his purification beads, and this matchup up against Serqet in particular is one that we know a lot of junglers favor the Serqet. Even when Kuang was the quintessential jungler, we saw junglers like adapting, pulling out the Serqet to try and handle it. And that was before Serqet was really considered one of the strongest picks among the assassins, so Weekend definitely going to have an opportunity to make Skeeledon pay, and you know Weekend wants to play aggressive. For me, Weekend just looks like a completely different player whenever he gets a comfort pick like Serqet.
I think it's awesome seeing Weekend on these more assassin-type picks, though, because we're so familiar with him playing a little bit more warrior setup style that getting to see him work on the actual hard carry side of things, I think it could be a real turning factor in this game.
And even though we don't see a lot of Agni, I think it synergizes beautifully with the Serqet because he's great in these 2v2, 3v3 engagements in the lane, in the jungle. But you can team fight pretty well with Agni, but where you can lock someone down from a distance and guarantee the CC for Weekend or try and peel for Weekend as he goes in. I think that Met and Weekend could really work together here with this mid-jungle combination and form a pretty potent duo.
The interesting aspect of it, too, is that they both have set up for each other. I mean, You've got the Deathbane on Serqet as well as the ultimate, and the 2 alone is plenty for Agni to get his poke off. And, you know, other side of the spectrum, you've got Agni with the stun setup.
Absolutely, and if we can use that last breath to toss someone into Metyankey's range, Path of Flames certainly deals a lot of damage when you can use it aggressively. That could be an opportunity for Met to do just that. There's been a lot of talk about the North American mid laners as a whole, and a lot of players moving from different roles to the mid lane. Metyankey made that transition towards the end of last year, moving from Hunter on Sword to the mid lane. And I don't think that he's really turned a lot of heads necessarily with his play, but he's been quietly pretty solid. He's been a solid mid laner for this split.
I do think that Venenu might have a slight upper hand over Metyankey right now, though, excluding the fact that he's already been warming up throughout the day, playing 2 sets already. But just if he missteps even the slightest bit with an Agni dash, he'll pretty much be guaranteed dead.
Gold Fury's pulled right now by Allegiance. They're committing everything they have, and they'll secure it no problem whatsoever. That evens the gold lead right there. It actually puts Allegiance a little bit ahead, right around 1,000 gold, despite the first blood going the way of Oxygen Supremacy. Look at all the ward coverage that Allegiance has on that left-hand side. Lack of vision certainly hurting Oxygen Supremacy in that little instance.
It is slightly unfortunate that happened, considering that DayToRemeber also, I don't think that he was available at that time to try and contest it. I think it would have been really difficult for him to run into the face of an entire enemy team. It's not usually an ideal situation. But Oxygen have been pretty familiar all day long so far with willingly playing from behind.
They have, but they've also gotten them, the majority of the games, they've had leads, and so I'm interested to see exactly how they'll play from even, though this early on, they could try and just wait it out. Their late game potential is phenomenal. They've got plenty of peel for their double hunters, and of course, Kuang in the late game is as potent as ever.
And Kuang's also absolutely terrifying for an Agni player like Metyankey, who's just going to be trying to do his best, I think, to escape at a certain point in time.
Going back to Met, though, I think that the important thing to keep in mind is that he played unreal at multiple lands during Season 3 for Soar as their hunter. DreamHack comes to mind. He really has strong performances on land as a whole, and I think that that could be the factor to kind of elevate his game to be one of the top-tier mid-laners instead of just a solid one. And that's exactly what Allegiance needs in this matchup, because basically that's what Venenu's been doing all day long. Has been playing from, you know, the normal level that we've been used to seeing him at into this unbelievable state.
I would certainly agree that everybody on Oxygen Supremacy has definitely stepped up their game for this event. And NeiruMah, this could potentially be the time for him to finally fall, but that Terra ultimate.
I love the discipline there from Weekend to not chase him down, knowing that he's in trouble. Skeeledon, he's in trouble now. Force use that Purification, but CycloneSpin just doesn't have the angle, and with that speed buff, it's going to be able to get away from the chase. But again, those Purification beads on cooldown. Again, going back to Weekend though, love the discipline. A lot of times you'll see Serqets use their ambush, try and chase that down, but instead knowing that Metyankey was in trouble in mid, and while you don't get a kill there, you get multiple ults, you get multiple cooldowns, and relics on cooldown, and what ends up being a win for Allegiance.
I think it's a lot safer right now for Allegiance as well. They don't want to risk giving the Kuang any sort of early lead, and as long as they don't overextend and risk dying and permitting Oxygen to really farm up into that mid-late game stage that they want, that's pretty much the ideal scenario for ALG.
Yeah, they've got quite a bit in terms of their team fighting potential. Lots of AOE. Though Serqet's really the only one who doesn't team fight particularly well on their side. It really relies on coming around the backside of team fights, picking off low health stragglers, or it can be also at times be the initiator, especially up against a god like Terra. If NeiruMah uses his escape, Weekend can throw him back into the enemy team and try and get him ready to go.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Weekend try and be more of that backline initiator, because if he can force out the Terra ultimate in sort of a panic mode by ulting one of the carries on the side of Oxygen Supremacy, then all ALG really have to do is reset at that point in time, and I think over time they would probably have a better team fighting advantage, considering that those Agni bombs really start to hurt at a certain point in time.
He just needs a couple items to get those Agni bombs to really be pretty effective. Skeeledon's been pretty effective right now on this Kuang, about a level and a half up on Weekend. Really doing an excellent job farming. He's on the top of his team in terms of player damage, and has already got that Spear of the Magus complete. Usually we see a Dynasty Plate Helm, but Skeeledon foregoing it in this instance. Why do you think that is?
I think for this matter, he's just looking primarily for the damage, if anything, and you could see he opted immediately for the Spear as opposed to the Dynasty Plate Helm like you mentioned. He hasn't really had too many encounters. I think if we'd seen a little bit more invades from ALG, we might have seen the Dynasty Plate Helm come through, but because ALG wasn't able to get off those early invades like you would have imagined with Osiris and Serqet, due to Skeeledon picking up that first blood so early on, I think that was really the overlying factor that helped them avoid that issue.
You've also got to keep in mind that Serqet's ultimate is doing true damage, so that physical protection really wouldn't help out Skeeledon in instances where Last Breath is used onto him. So instead just going for the pure offense, like you mentioned. Looks like Metyankey is going for what could be an early Spear of the Magus himself, or a Divine Ruin to try and shut down the healing coming out of NeiruMah on Terra. Is Terra one of these gods that warrants anti-heal items, or can you just kind of ignore it?
She's got a sleeper heal, if anything, but it's not just the Terra that they have to worry about, it's the Cupid as well. You don't really notice it until the team fights are starting to be extended. Those hearts actually heal for quite a decent bit of health, especially when you combine it along with the Terra sustain.
That's a great point, but it is going to be the Spear of the Magus for Metyankey, which synergizes beautifully with his passive. You can get multiple ticks. Remember, Spear of the Magus getting a recent buff, getting that stack threshold up from 3 to 5, so you get a ton of flat penetration as you hit any god with a dot or multiple abilities. And as we mentioned, the Agni passive certainly fits that bill.
And another aspect I actually just noticed is Kiki has Hog, or Wrath, and I think that is actually going to play a really important part for Oxygen Supremacy, and that might also explain a little bit more of the passiveness on the side of ALG. They can't really look to try and force too many objectives without the vision that they need, and right now, sure, they were able to lock down Oracle Vision. They picked up the first Gold Fury, but once Kiki starts factoring into these fights, I think that could be incredibly difficult to work around.
Without a doubt, and that you see the start there on that right-hand side. I think that that Hog is picked up to try and make sure that Skeeledon is able to secure his own buffs on that right-hand side. Nice intelligent play out of the veteran player, now playing in the solo lane. We've just talked so much about Oxygen Supremacy. Everyone knows their story by now, man. They're Challenger Cup players. Kiki, Skeeledon, Venenu, they've been in the SPL. Kiki's played a lot of different positions, blah, 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 blah. They're really good. Is at the end of the day, that's, I think, what that should be the takeaway here, regardless of where Oxygen ends up falling or if they fall at all here this weekend. I think that's the real takeaway, is that these guys really came to show up at LAN.
Well, Oxygen Supremacy, I think another thing is they're the dark horse right now. They really are. Even with Skeeledon and Kiki having been in the SPL formerly, they still came from the Challenger Cup, and they're trying to rise up now, which they've done an excellent job at so far, but it's just beautiful.
I think they're pretty close to shedding that tag, though, Taco. Just talking to the pro players in between games, I think a lot of people are expecting Kiki and Co. to win this set and continue their march. Allegiance, despite having a pretty good seeding, remember, they lose their support just before this LAN. You heard Weekend in his interview say that they've had 3 days of scrims with Vivian as their support. Could be, it's going to be tough to take on some of these tenured teams that have been together for a whole split when you're just trying to get your synergy down in your 3v3 core.
And right now you can really tell that Allegiance is just trying to feel out Oxygen Supremacy. And what I really like is, oh wow, Skeely might actually be in a lot of trouble here.
But he's juking everything, bombs, hammers, nothing hits. The blink out of the Petrify as well. NeiruMah gonna eat that last breath, but Fields of Love comes down. Weekend trying to get away from the damage from the rest of Oxygen Supremacy. DayToRemeber dashes forward, but can't quite find the last auto attack. Weekend escapes with 1 HP. Now Oceans, he's got to deal with Skeeledon, and he turns it around on the jungler. NeiruMah cleans up Oceans to at least trade out 1 for 1. But what a back and forth there in that little skirmish.
I cannot believe Weekend managed to survive there. That was excellent peel coming out of Vivian on that Fafnir. As soon as DayToRemeber dashed, trying to secure the kill onto Weekend, he immediately just 180 turns around and stuns him, and that's exactly the kind of peel you need from your support.
It just so deep into the enemy jungle to try and pick off Skeeledon, who juked everything there. The well-timed blink to get away from Petrify as well. DayToRemeber somehow survives using that Aegis to dash forward. Couldn't quite find the last auto attack onto Weekend, thanks to that extra movement speed from that Heartseeker, an item that we haven't seen quite as much since the recent nerf to put it up in price. Do you think this is the right spot for this item for Weekend?
I think it's a fair item to have, considering that he's been utilizing his mobility very well in these engagements. I mean, you saw how deep he went for Skeeledon, and he almost caught him despite Skeely having the speed buff on him.
That's true. Definitely a lot of extra mobility, but it could hurt his damage in terms of trying to focus down NeiruMah, who's gone for these reinforced Greaves. It'd be pretty tough to punch through all that extra protection from those boots and the Gauntlet of Thebes, along with that Mark of the Vanguard, without any penetration in his build. But Weekend likely to go for that in that third slot, and that's exactly what he will do. A couple options could be that Jotun's Wrath, but like you mentioned, there's a couple sleeper heals on the side of Oxygen Supremacy, and despite Last Breath having 100% healing reduction, it's nice to get a little bit extra on the team with your Deathbane and your Madness.
Brawlers is a decent bit cheaper than the Jotuns as well, but I feel as though Weekend would primarily want to optimize the CDR. He really needs that cooldown reduction to try and be spamming his ultimate as much as possible, because the more he gets his ultimate off, the higher chance his team has of finding a pick.
Both supports have yet to pick up their second relic, though NeiruMah is level 12 and ready to go as soon as he goes back to base. 3-man grouping here in the middle lane as both teams go back to just farming up their respective waves. But CycloneSpin's going to be able to push this wave into the tower, it looks like, and potentially grab that 500 gold away.
And you can tell Metyankey wanting to get a little bit of poke potential, but not too much done to either side just yet.
DayToRemeber going to eat a lot of damage off that stun as Oceans throws those Viper shots in, but there go the hearts, and he's almost back to full HP. No thorns coming out of Kiki this time. Remember, he picked up that hog, so he has to go for teleport in that second option. So CycloneSpin, he's going to be able to frontline a little bit better and return some of that damage that DayToRemeber is going for, because he doesn't have any lifesteal. Neither does Venenu on the Skadi, and so this Thorns pickup could really end up paying big dividends for CycloneSpin.
I would really like to see NeiruMah pick up a shell whenever he does get that opportunity to back to base and get that second relic. I think it could really help out Oxygen Supremacy in these team fights due to the AoE damage that Allegiance has.
It makes those bombs from Agni basically tickle you instead of chunking you down. Gold Fury getting chunked down a little bit here by Oxygen Supremacy, but they were looking for the fight. They're looking for Vivian, but he's going to be able to transform and get out of that mesmerize there from DayToRemeber. Weekend immediately dives in, but gets exploded by Venenu. Met finds Skeeledon, but Vivian falls. A double kill for the mid laner there. Skeeledon the only one to fall so far for Oxygen Supremacy as Metyankey gets popped by Venenu. 3 kills, a triple for the mid lane Hunter. DayToRemeber cleans up Oceans, and now it's CycloneSpin alone trying to return on to Venenu, and he will find it with those AoE autos, but I don't know if he's going to be able to get out of this one, Taco.
And I don't think Cyclone feels as though he's going to be able to get out of this one either. Just trying to buy time around this Gold Fury, but unfortunately enough for him, he's still going. And okay, there you go. DayToRemeber finally cleaning up the kill.
A valiant effort by CycloneSpin, but it doesn't stop the deicide for the Challenger Cup players rolling through this gauntlet so far. Deicide, the Gold Fury as well, but it only comes up to about a 3,000 gold lead at the end of this, Taco. So not horrible for Team Allegiance.
Not horrible in the slightest. I mean, both of these drafts have gods that do fairly well in the late game stages. You've got the Serqet to counteract the Kuang. So I think a lot of this is just going to come down to these little engagements around the objectives and seeing who can find the better end of the trades.
Skeeledon has that Polynomicon now, and that's when the warning signs start going off about Kuang, and where you know you're about to get bursted down pretty heavily. Looks like he's going to go for extra penetration. Could be a Spear of Desolation in this instance, try and get him a little bit of extra just flat pen and cooldown reduction, but an Obsidian Shard would really guarantee that Skeeledon is doing true damage to basically any target he hits.
And you can also tell DayToRemeber, he's opting to skip any sort of sustain, which I think is fair play considering he is Cupid, he has his own self-heal available, and opting straight for the Titan's Bane. He's going to be doing a significant amount of damage between his Heart Bomb and the Fields of Love.
But if CycloneSpin can get in front of him with those Thorns, it's going to be just returning a lot of damage to DayToRemeber. Damage onto him right now as Weekend blinks forward and finds him with the ultimate. The bleed going to try and finish off the Hunter, but I don't think it's going to be enough, and it will not. Just level 18, too healthy there. Too much HP just by leveling up for the Hunter, DayToRemeber, as he survives the gank, which allows OS to just snag away that Portal Demon on the right-hand side while Weekend is distracted on the left.
And I'm sure that DayToRemeber is more than happy to take that trade. Not only does he get away with his life, but he forces out the Serqet ultimate, and they get nothing in return.
And he got the blink as well, though he did lose his beads in that engagement, which could mean that Weekend could just poke his head over there pretty soon once more. Ocean's only a level down right now to the Hunter, he's having a pretty solid game. Kiki jumps into that backside. The bombs come raining down from Metyankey, but they don't really do that much damage. Vivian goes up into the Draconic form to try and force Oxygen Supremacy off of this Tier 1 tower.
And I think that that was a little bit unfortunate for the Fafnir to come out this early, because I don't think that they're going to be able to hold this T1 tower, not against the Skadi. It's already falling down, and Skeeledon going to be able to get out, no problems.
But CycloneSpin is here. There's the Thorns as well. Kiki slows everyone with that Sentinel of Zeus, making sure Allegiance has no chance to get past him and try and get into that backline that is somewhat weak right now, but the heals from Terra and the Cupid are going to start to play in this engagement.
What I really liked about Oxygen Supremacy there underneath that T1 is while they were committing to the tower, they weren't really looking to poke out too much onto ALG.
Flop on there to Oceans, looking for, there's the Fields of Love on top of Metyankey, but it does, he's able to escape. Huge Petrify coming out of Oceans, but Vivian falling too low, and he's gobbled up by Skeeledon, who's now looking at the fight from a bird's eye view. He sees DayToRemeber clean up Oceans, no problem whatsoever. He's tossed back into the tower. That last breath gonna finish him off. enough. Weekend at least able to put ALG on the board in this scenario, but DayToRemeber picks up number 4. CycloneSpin not found on the map anymore. 1, 2, and 1 for the solo laner. And look at how healthy Oxygen Supremacy is. They knock down that tier 2 tower, and the next thing on the list, the Phoenix.
The Phoenix is 100% gone too. You've got a Skadi and a Cupid, 2 pen-based hunters that have plenty of items online to deal more than enough damage to these objectives.
What went wrong here for Allegiance? Because this game was fairly close even after that Deicide and the Gold Fury, but then it just all of a sudden Oxygen takes one fight and it seems like they're miles ahead.
They pushed up too far in that middle lane. They thought they could potentially return the T1 exchange after OS secured Allegiance's T1, but because of that, they were all just too far up. The Terra ultimate swinging through. On top of that, you've got the Nike passive online, which also provides a little bit of movement speed. So when you think about the movement speed that OS has available to them right now, and the healing, these extended engagements, they can't allow them to happen on the side of ALG.
These numbers aren't staggering in terms of the heals here. You've got 4,600 on the Terra, 2,700 on the Cupid, but it's about when these heals are coming through, and it was in that engagement as Allegiance pushed up and tried to return that tier 1 tower, like you mentioned. And I think Kiki, he got a lot of praise for his Morgan game, and deservedly so, but his play on these tanks has been unbelievable. Just the setup and the peel that he's had, just the presence of mind to use Sentinel of Zeus as a wall, basically. A 60% slow is a wall, for all intents and purposes. And he walls off Allegiance from chasing, which allows his team to heal up and re-engage, and that nets them a lot of gold and a lot of kills in their favor. We're 23 minutes in right now. Oxygen Supremacy continuing their rampage through this gauntlet, up 10-4 against Allegiance right now, but Oceans is in trouble, has to use that Petrify, but he's gone before it even goes off. Skeeledon cleans up his 3rd kill, evening his scoreline at 3-3-6.
And that's another important factor that we haven't really gotten too much of a chance to touch on until just now. What's going wrong as well for ALG is the burst. They don't have nearly as much burst as Oxygen Supremacy do, and it's showing. Very, very much so. I mean, Skeeledon is just absolutely destroying, and while he's 3-3, he's died almost every single time that he's tried to commit too hard, but that's just his playstyle. He loves aggression. He does so much damage before he goes out, though.
Exactly. While he's low on the player damage charts, Kuang is one of those single-target assassins that is looking to pump all that damage into one person at one time and be able to secure the kill. But DayToRemeber is through the roof right now in terms of damage. This man has played numerous hunters and has just looked unreal doing it time and time again. Hear that little chorus there, the little nice little sound? That means that 2 players on Oxygen Supremacy have hit level 20, and that completes Nike's passive. Now you've got extra movement speed and damage, and the Allegiance, if their job wasn't hard enough, now they've got to deal with some more damage on Skeeledon, some more mobility out of these double hunters. Good luck locking them down.
It's also interesting that you pointed out that Skeeledon is one of those great single-target burst characters, but when it comes down to it, on Kuang versus Serqet, Kuang's going to have a significantly easier time getting his poke damage off than what a Serqet will.
That is true, but no easy times here for Allegiance as they try and do the Portal Demon, but Oxygen Supremacy doesn't want to let him have it. Oceans carries that Heart Bomb to CycloneSpin. It's Metyankey's already dead. Kiki able to put himself on the board. Skeeledon picks up Oceans there on the backside by the speed buff. He dashes away, trying to find the kill onto Vivian. Double kill for the Kuang. CycloneSpin falls down as well. 5-0-6 for DayToRemeber. 4 dead, only Weekend left to watch as Oxygen Supremacy say, who needs the Fire Giant? Who needs the left Phoenix? Who needs your tower on the right-hand side? We're just looking to go 5 games in a row.
And I think that they're going to be able to take it. A Sloan Serqet, the only one to contest. Titan's already at half HP, 10% and gone.
This is unbelievable. This is a run. I mean, when we draw up the Gauntlet, we're like, yeah, the Challenger Cup teams, they come, they've got a chance, they can do something cool. This is it. I mean, this is a run unlike we have ever seen before from one of these teams, going back to Titan-esque in Season 1. Unbelievable play out of these guys.
They're absolutely on fire right now. And if you told me that this was a Challenger team that rose up, I would probably have a really hard time believing it prior to seeing them play right now.
Absolutely killing it. Skeeledon, Venenu, Kiki, and then the duo lane as well, DayToRemeber and NeiruMah, just absolutely having a phenomenal day, and they're looking to keep it going. They've got quite the tall task ahead of them, but they're almost there, Taco. One more win, They've only got 2 more teams to play before they can move on to Sunday.
I think that was a really important game, though, for ALG because it gives their new support player, Vivian, a chance to step his feet. He dips his toes into the water, gets a little bit of a feel of the SPL level gameplay because I think we can definitely agree that Oxygen Supremacy is SPL level gameplay right now.
I mean, they've won 5 games in a row, and they're all against SPL teams, absolutely, without a doubt. But how did they do it in game 1? We've got a desk to tell you just that. Tom, take it away.
We've also got some people on the desk. It's not just a desk, but thank you for objectifying us very much, aggro. I suppose we'll still take care of business. You know, earlier, I was sitting here saying, well, what happens when they run out of tactics? What happens when they run out of gas? This Oxygen Supremacy team has gotten better as they've gone on. Here, finally, I think Skeeledon has earned his right to play the hard carry, and then his team, after a couple of games, say, all right, we'll let you do the hard carry. Out comes the Kuang, and he just eats everybody up.
You know, between the double Hunter and the double Sustain composition coming out of Oxygen Supremacy and no Sustain at all from Team Allegiance, there's just no way that they can win teamfights as the teamfights keep lasting longer and longer.
Yeah, it was really impressive watching OS take this victory, and they did so in dominating fashion. What was the key here for Oxygen?
Well, I felt that since ALG drafted early, they definitely needed to get that early pressure, but they put Agni and Serqet in mid, which was not a good combination against the Skadi Owl. They lost that mid pressure, which ended up costing them a lot of the map pressure. And I also believe going into there was a Gold Fury fight that ended up deciding the game, at least in my opinion. Even though OS put so much into this Fafnir that ulted, Weekend ended up going in a little too early and ended up getting picked for it. And because of that, the team ended up collapsing, and OS just ended up kind of like swiping through. And like I said at the beginning, their comp was much stronger when it gets to the late game.
Yeah, I sort of came to it. I sort of came to it at the same point for the Gold Fury, and I got to tip my hat to Oceans. He winds up dying in the exchange, but we see the meditation that allows some players on Allegiance to get out of jail, and then Oceans on the bottom side takes a 2v1, takes one on, gets the kill, and then winds up dying to the wayside. But his teammates can go ahead and clean up the rest of it. And this young man right here has been so important for Allegiance. He did work in game 1, but unfortunately it just wasn't enough. He needs some help. He really needs some help. Totally, where's it coming from?
Absolutely. I feel like Chaos mentioned before, the mid jungle pressure was just non-existent early on coming from Allegiance, and if that pressure falls, then your Silence are going to start collapsing, and then that's kind of what Oceans needs to rely on in order for him to be successful in this mid game, especially once he's playing the Medusa.
Yeah, the Medusa, I mean, that's his go-to. That's his go-to. I think one of the other problems across the way was CycloneSpin not really always present in some of these exchanges. So Allegiance need to sort of dial that one up. But honestly, DayToRemeber. That's my analysis on this Hunter position, man. DayToRemeber has exceeded my expectations. He's exceeded probably everybody's expectations outside of him and his teammates. This is a guy that dominates his lower end scenes, whether it's AVGL or the Challenger Cup or otherwise, but hasn't made the break into the SPL. And we've seen players do this. We've seen the famous hates. We've seen these guys come through, and they don't always work out. Right now, I mean, this is happening.
The impressive feat for DayToRemeber also is the fact that his picks are not coming early at all. This Cupid was in the last stages of the P's and B's for the first game. So to have this kind of flexibility coming from the Challenger circuit, this is making things very difficult for all these SPL teams, already winning 2 sets and now 1 game away from winning their 3rd.
He's played, Rom is the DayToRemeber character in my eyes. That's a basic attack character. Then he's played the Cupid, which is virtually the other side of the coin. Pure ability-based, heavy AoE damage. Just incredible how he can play both sides of these and work well with the team and then some.
And this ultimate right here, that Cupid ultimate actually mesmerized CycloneSpin in the backline, so it made it a 5-on-4 for about 3 to 4 seconds to allow the pressure from Oxygen to be able to just win this so hard.
And then after doing the utility of keeping CycloneSpin out of the fight, he just beats him up. Just straight up Cupid spams him and is able to just take it. Right now, looks very relaxed. That's what's very interesting to me. He's been going nuts during these games, and he's able to just reset in between. How important is it, Chaos, to sort of have that momentum, but be able to relax as well?
I think it's extremely important, especially when they had the Terra in their comp. They were pushing their advantage super, super well, especially with those Cupid ults. And then they just needed to back up, sustain with the heart, sustain with the Terra 3, and that way they would be able to just get to full HP, take an objective afterwards, and just kind of steamroll the rest of the game.
Yeah, he looks very comfortable, I think is the #1 word I want to use, is comfort. We've seen teams and players succeed and flourish after finding the right spot. My favorite example of that is Mask. He is a great player that wasn't really in a great spot until he found those guys on Luminosity. Then he was really able to flourish. And I feel the same for these guys. Chaos, talk to me about how well these guys have really, or how long these guys have been playing together.
They've been friends for a really long time. When I talked to Skeeledon and I asked him what was, so different about this team, he was telling me that they're very, very comfortable with each other. If they make mistakes, they don't really care. They kind of laugh it over. They're able to work on their problems because they don't get down each other's throats when things are getting rough.
And that's an important part, I think, for all the teams, and why I think Oxygen is being so successful here today.